My
That's
poor
too
girlfriends
good.
had to go into the Dollar General because there's no clothing stores in Moab. So they're in the dollar store buying literal granny pants that the only ones they had were big ass XL white granny pants. And that's what they delivered to me at the checkpoints to wear.
You're like, what is this?
Deary me. So yeah, that was pretty damn embarrassing.
That's pretty good. That's up there with, I would say that's top three of our embarrassing story. We've done 100+ podcasts, and you're top three, so
Oh wow, that's good.
that's
Yeah.
good. Yeah, that's a good one. Oh my gosh.
Shout out to
Whew.
Rob for
Mm.
putting up with me for 50 miles with that.
It's Golden Hour Adventure Time, featuring everyday people doing extraordinary things. From the peaks of victory to the valleys of defeat, these are their stories. Now, from the back of the pack, your hosts, Justin and Robbie.
We're already laughing in this podcast, so we know it's going to be a good one. We have a extremely special guest. I know I say it all the time. Here I am with my hand thing. Nobody can see me waving my hands, but if you don't know, we're now on YouTube. Robbie is an editing fool, and he gets down on the computer, hammers it out, and we have a super cool podcast that we put on YouTube. So if you don't just like listening to us and you want to look at our beautiful faces for an hour, head over to YouTube, give us a like, a follow, and watch it there, I guess. But anyway, today's great guest, Lucia Leonard. Welcome to the podcast.
Hi, thanks for having me on, guys.
Have you ever had an introduction like that? That's not much of an introduction for you, but for us.
Oh, I love it. I love it. It's all about you. That's
Yeah,
good.
yeah, that's true. We I always got to make it about us every once in a while, but
Yeah.
a
Well, it's your
cool,
podcast.
cool story about Lucia and I. We met, it's like most of my internet friends, we met on social media, on Instagram. Just following each other, chit-chatting back and forth, knowing nothing about Lucia other than her posting her running stuff, and I'm sure knowing nothing about me other than posting my running stuff. She mentioned she's coming to Alaska, and I was like, cool, let's get a run in, this and that. Come to find out she's there for a certain reason. We'll get into it further in the podcast, but we got a run in together. We went and had dinner, met her husband. It was just such a cool thing to have an internet social media friend and then become like an actual friend, And so I think it's full circle. And now she's on the podcast, so she's mine and Robbie's friend now. So
And that was awesome. They were the best corn dogs I'd ever had.
yeah, we went to a brewery and had some gourmet corn dogs. So what it is, what it is. You don't have much selection when you go to a brewery and they have one food truck. So
It was good though.
well, Lucia, let's break it down. You're a runner. We always want to know the backstory, like how you got into it, like what made you identify as a runner. So take it away.
Okay. Well, I definitely didn't identify as a runner for beginning of my life. I was overweight, verging on obese. I was size 20, probably 200 pounds. Always been kind of voluptuous, I should say, during my high school years and teen years, and hated sport. I used to forge notes from my parents to get out of sports class. So yeah, people from school don't recognize me. Literally, they're just like, who is this person? She's a monster. And yeah, I kind of reached a point in my life where, clothes sizing, nowadays you can get any clothes size in the shops, but back in the early 2000s, I was having to start shopping at the big girl shop, which to me was like a big wake up call because I never realized I was overweight. I was always happy, thought I was still, pretty sexy woman. What can I say? And then, shopping in the big girl shop, and I was like, well, this is not a good thing. I need to start doing something for my health because this just isn't good. So I started getting fit, going to the gym, eating a bit better. And as part of that, I started doing a bit of running. Unheard of for me, but, I would run one lamppost, walk the next. And slowly that was kind of building up. And eventually I decided, so this was kind of 2004, 2005. I was about to get married. So thinking about losing some weight and decided I'd enter a 10K race, local in Manchester in the UK where I was living. And signed up for that race, just absolutely pooping my pants, just thinking, I don't this is going to be terrible. There's going to be like thousands of people there. You know, it's a big city sort of race, and I'm going to come dead last, and it's just going to be so embarrassing. And I went there, and, you know, once I got over the nerves, I just had the most amazing time. Just the whole buzz of the race and the people around me. And yeah, I think from there, I was hooked on the running side of things, and, you know, kind of progressed through doing half marathons, ran my first marathon in 2010 in Amsterdam. I'm Dutch born, so I thought, why not go back to my home roots, run in Amsterdam? One,
That's
it's
cool.
flat, so that was good.
Yeah.
It's in October, so it is also cool weather. So I thought, right, that's the perfect first marathon. Went and did that, and yeah, was running alongside a pacer who was wearing a shirt that said like something about some 100K race. And, you know, I was in between gasping for air. I was asking him, what's 100K? What's that about? He's like, I run 100K, 100-mile races. And I'm just like, what the hell? Like, I can't even imagine finishing this 42.2Ks, let alone 100K. But yeah, I think that kind of planted a little bit of a seed in my head. And fast forward a couple of years later, and Dion, my husband, had bought me a book for my birthday, The World's Toughest Endurance Challenges. Meant to be a lovely coffee table book. And yeah, we'd had a few too many cocktails that evening. And he said, open the book up, and the first thing your finger falls on, we're going to go do. And yeah, that was the Kalahari or Robbie's Extreme Marathon, which is not a marathon. It's actually a multi-stage race, 155 miles across the South African desert, fully self-sufficient. So you're carrying all your food and kit to survive the week. You're running out in the desert with, you know, baboons, springboks, giraffes. There was leopards around the camp at night. Yeah, it was, you know, just something that was way beyond my comprehension. So we went out there with no idea. All the gear, though, we did manage to find somebody that kitted us out, gave our credit card over and said, just sort us out. And we went out there with no idea and just had the most amazing experience, you know, week-long race running with a really small group of people. It was 60 people at the race, and we just had the most amazing time. And yeah, that's really, you're running a marathon a day. One day you run 2 marathons, so 155 miles over the week. And yeah, it was just phenomenal. And I finally found something that made me feel like confident and empowered, felt like I could take on the world. And it was actually something I was kind of good at. I came second female at the race. Now,
Wow.
you know, there was probably only 12 females there, but I was second.
Yeah.
So I was pretty impressed with that, from the fat girl from years ago to second place at a multi-stage. And yeah, that just inspired me even more. I was like, wow, you know, this is something that the longer I go, the better I seem to do. So yeah, maybe this long distance stuff is something I like. So
Was that your
yeah.
first ultra, or had you run like 100K, 50K, something in between there?
I'd done like a little 31 miler in the UK, somewhere up in Whitby, up on the, what's on that, on the East Coast, some random little ultra a
Okay.
few months before as part of training. So
Okay, yeah.
yeah, that was all I'd done. So
Man,
yeah, it
just
was kind of a
jumping-
big jump up.
Essentially jumping from a marathon to a 5-day marathon.
Yeah, so that was pretty epic. And yeah,
And from there, that was the bug. That was it.
it was a slippery slope from there.
I tell everybody, I'm like, if you jump into the ultra world, like, hold on fast, because it's very addicting and you're not going to be able to quit.
Exactly. And the people you hang out with, you know, my
Yep.
friends have accused me of this, but it's like, hang out with me, you're going to end up running ultra marathons. You know, it's like contagious or something. And so,
Yeah.
yeah, you're hanging out with people that are telling you about these epic like achievements they've done, and you're like, wow, I like the sound of that. I want to give that a go. So
Yeah.
it's very dangerous, slippery slope.
So stage races, like, they're not very big in the US. I know we do have them, but they're bigger in the UK, Africa, China, you know, like the European and Asian countries. They're really big, and they're not really big over here. Why do you think that is?
Yeah, I'm not sure. It just seems to be a bit of a cultural thing. You know, yeah, US has got a couple now. There's Desert Rats do one out near
Yeah.
Grand Junction, Moab Way, Trans Rockies in Colorado. A little bit different take on that because it's, you know, you're not self-sufficient or anything like that. But yeah, really big over in Europe, Europe and Africa. Marathon des Sables was obviously, it's the blue ribbon event of multi-stage races. And I think everyone's exposed to that being in Europe, because the French and the Moroccans are a really big powerhouse of runners over in Europe. So if you're in the UK, you've heard of that race. And I think a lot of people just aspire to do that. Because of that, there's a lot of documentaries on it, gets a lot of coverage in the UK, because we get quite a lot of strong UK runners heading out there. So it receives a lot of profile. So I guess, you're not getting that profile in the US with it. Yeah, which is a shame, because they're a unique experience. You're running, and especially like the one that I did in Kalahari, very small group of people, 60 people, whereas Marathon des Sables has about 1,100. So quite different. But you're camping every night with people. So, in a race, sometimes you could be on your own, or you're with a select group of people that you're leapfrogging. But with MDS and the likes of that, you're back at camp every night. So you've got all sort of evening, afternoon to hang out with people. You're sitting around in your tents, which are always communal tents. So you're having a chat, you're getting to know people. So it's a really social sort of community as well. So I think, there's a real fantastic element to doing the multi-stages as opposed to single stage.
Yeah. Now, one that I don't know, Dragon Spine, is that a multi-stage, or is that just a like 200, 300 mile race?
Dragon's Back, that's in Wales.
Dragonback, yeah. I knew that was in the UK, but...
Yeah, it's a multi-stage race as well. So again, you get set distances you need to run each day. That one's slightly different because you can pick your own routes as well. So you can, depending on how good your nav is, you can make things harder for yourself or easier. So similar style there as well. Yeah.
I don't know Peter Mortimer, but I know that just by following him, he goes over there and runs that quite often. So, yeah, stage races to me, I don't know. Robbie, have you ever even considered like doing a stage race? Like it's just not something that has ever been really on my radar, but it's super fascinating.
When I was living in Colorado, though, Run the Rockies was always something I want to do, but it's quite expensive and hard to get into. And all these other stage races, just like you were saying, Lucia, are across the world. I think it'd be awesome just to go out there and do one. All you got to do is worry about running for a few days. And like you said, you're back at camp every night and hang out. It's just not accessible, really, like we were talking about here in the U.S. So I've thought about them, but that's as far as I've gone.
Yeah, same.
Yeah. Well, there's a couple of new companies coming out now. There's one in particular, Ultra X, and that's based in the UK, and they're trying to make it a lot more affordable because, totally get it. Trans Rockies is expensive. You need to be having some good money for that. Same with Marathon des Sables. You probably need $4,500-5,000 just for the entry fee. But the likes of Ultra X are now trying to do it for around, I think, 1,000 to 1,500, and they're doing it on a shorter span, so it's 5 days. So you travel the weekend, race, travel the following weekend, because some of these other ones you kind of need to take 10 to 14 days off work, whereas with Ultra X, it's a week off and you're done, and it's a lot more affordable as well. And, they're in amazing locations too. I did a race with them in Sri Lanka, and, they're doing races in Jordan, the Azores, Namibia, things like that. So they're actually doing one in Nevada coming up this year, I think in November.
Oh,
so
really?
They're really expanding out, and it's a great way to sort of get to places. Like for me, going to Sri Lanka, I wouldn't have thought to go there except I was going to do this race. So it's kind of a way to get to these countries that you might not have otherwise thought of going to as well. So yeah.
Now, how many
Check
stage
'em out.
races have you done?
Well, probably about 7, I think.
Okay.
Yeah, I did Kalahari twice. I did Marathon des Sables twice. Then I've done the half MDS in Future Ventura twice. Seem to like doing them twice. And Sri Lanka, Trans Rockies. There we go, 7. It's building up.
Now, what is the Trans Rockies? I've never heard of that race.
So that one's in Colorado, and it's kind of all around. Where did we actually start? Buena Vista, and it kind of goes up and through Leadville, and you're all around Vail, and it's 6 days, 120 miles, quite a lot of vert. I'd have to look back and check, but I think it was like 30 to 35,000 feet of vert, so pretty chunky, and you're at altitude. But it's not self-sufficient, and they have different categories. So you can run solo, you can run as a pair or a mixed pair. So I ran with a good friend of mine, and we ran as a female pair. And then you camp every night. So they've got like 500 tents laid out, little 2-man tents that everyone sleeps in. And it's a bit of a party race. You know, they've got Chillville where you head back to after each day, and you're drinking beers, you're eating burgers and snacks. And yeah, there's live music. So it's like a really good vibe as well.
That's
Yeah,
cool.
very,
Yeah,
very different.
that's cool.
Yeah.
I'm going to look into these. I'm extremely fascinated now.
What do your friends think of you taking your
What?
vacation time to go run these stage races? I know Justin and I get this when we spend our vacation time running, but what do your friends think of
Yeah.
that?
Well, probably pretty similar. First comments are always like, are you crazy? Like, you are crazy. You're mental. What are you coming up with now? Why can't you have a normal holiday like the rest of us and go and lay on a beach somewhere? So, yeah, but I think a lot of them are amazed and inspired as well. A lot of them used to be quite worried, thinking that we might die out there.
Well, Marathon des Sables is that's a pretty dangerous race, right?
Yeah. Well, they all
Well, I mean,
are,
all of them are,
technically.
yeah, but-
Yeah, and yeah, that kind of does come to fruition sometimes. That you're out there and you think, yeah, this is kind of a rather sort of sketchy spot I'm in at the moment.
Yeah.
But yeah, I think in general they're amazed by it. They love having a friend that they can say, oh yeah, my crazy friend here, she does crazy stuff like this. So yeah, they're really supportive. And yeah, and of course, I've got a whole new friend circle now from doing the races, because yeah, every race you go to, you're just making new friends. The circle just grows and grows. So yeah, I love that part of it.
Yeah, it's great. The
Yeah.
people that you meet, either through like the podcast, I've met a lot of people in person that listen to the podcast, or through social media. It's super cool just to our community is large to us, but in a grand scheme of things, it's very small. And so it's really cool to make connections, like, just like how you and I did, just
Yeah.
through social media, and you just happened to be up in Fairbanks, and boom, we hooked up and went on a run, ate some dinner, and it was, that's cool.
Yeah. And there's always, like, my husband's currently in China about to run a race, which will probably start any minute now. And he was at the race check-in, and yeah, some Irish guy, Brian, was there. And he's like, oh yeah, I ran with your wife at Tahoe, and yeah, we spent a few miles together. It's like, it's just such a small world,
It really
It's
is.
crazy.
It really is. It really is. Well, we booked you. We didn't book you for just a certain reason, but like you messaged us and you were like, hey, let's get a podcast. You just finished your 3 weeks post Divide 200.
Mm-hmm.
Let's
Yes.
talk about it.
I think I'm still suffering PTSD from it, honestly. Wow, it was,
I don't know yet. I'm not there. I haven't done a 200, but
yeah.
I know what you're talking about.
Yeah, it definitely made me have to dig the deepest I've ever had to dig for the longest period of time. Previously, the three routes I've run have been Bigfoot, Moab, and Tahoe in the US with Destination Trail. And whilst I thought they were really tough, the Divide made them look like sort of a bit pedestrian at some points. When I ran those ones, I suffered, but I still had many moments of joy and really enjoying myself out there. And I have to say, the Divide after checkpoint 1, I was void of joy. It was a suffer fest, which, I can look back on now, and it's type 2 fun. I
Yeah.
kind of really appreciate what it was all about. But wow, that was something else,
Well, tell us about like what is it's 200 miles, but like what's the vert? What is the situation with like aid stations? Walk us through the
Yeah.
logistics of the race.
Yeah, so it's 200 miles through the Canadian Rockies. So you start at Castle Mountain Resort, and you're sort of up and over all the peaks there and through Crow's Nest. And you kind of almost do like a figure of 8. So you end up back at Castle Mountain Resort as well. So 40,000 feet of vert, which,
Yeah.
was brutal. Some of the climbs were like 35% grade. And, they're so long and so steep that even when you're climbing up them, when you need a rest, you're actually just leaning on your poles, and your calf muscles are just stretched because there's not an ounce of flat ground to stand on.
Yeah.
So yeah, it was so technical as well. I remember, there was only a couple of podcasts out about it at the time, and I remember people saying, if you can get to the first 40 miles, 70 Ks, feeling okay, you're going to finish. Now, I got to the first 40 miles feeling like I'd done 200. I was pretty much done, I was absolutely ruined. It was just so technical, so much rock and shale. And even you think, oh, great, we're going to have the downhill. It's like, no, that's 35% grade on shale. It's nightmare to go down. So
Just sliding down it.
Just sliding down. The weather was okay. Weather was good for day one and the first night, but then the weather changed as well, which just added a whole other element. I think without the weather, maybe a sort of view on it might have changed, because any sections that might have been runnable were now not runnable because they were complete mudfests. So you were sliding all over the place, and your shoes were caked in like 10 pounds each of mud. And yeah, it was, I had quite a few questionable moments along the course of wondering why I'm doing this with my life. Why am I not just doing body pump and Zumba at the gym, like normal middle-aged women are doing? This is crazy. So yeah, there were quite a few moments where I considered, it was kind of in the back of my head of giving up, but at the same time, there was no chance I was giving up. Like, I was going to finish at all costs. And I think I had a crew person there with me, Leah Vincent, who, if she wasn't there, I think I probably would have quit, because coming into the first point that you could see your crew at checkpoint 3, which was the 40 miles in, I was 40 minutes before cutoff, which for me is highly unusual. I'm normally solid middle of the pack, and here I was checkpoint 3 and I'm 40 minutes behind cutoff. So that threw me mentally as well, because I normally in my head when I'm doing the 200s, I'm thinking, doesn't matter how bad things get, because I'm normally a day ahead of cutoffs by the end. So I can afford to have a 6-hour sleep, 8 hours if I want. And here I wanted to have a sleep, and I didn't have time to sleep. I had to get going. So that just mentally, that just really threw me. I thought, God, am I this bad at it? Like what? And, I'm thinking, wow, I'm possibly dead last, because I actually stayed at the checkpoint till cutoff time doing my feed and stuff like that. And I just thought, wow, I'm essentially last in this race at the moment. I think they actually let a few more runners through, but yeah, for me, it was a bit of a, rude awakening. And yeah, I thought, and I actually didn't care. I was like, if I'm last, I'm last, but I'm going. Like, I'm going to keep going.
Yeah.
And yeah, it was a really rough ride.
That's 40 miles, that checkpoint 3. That's the 40 mile mark? Okay.
Yeah.
How many check marks are usually in a 200 like that?
They're normally kind of every anywhere from 13 to 20 miles apart. There were some sections along here that were quite long as well, like 20-mile sections. So quite a long time to be going without checkpoints. And some of the checkpoints were quite remote. So you might have been going 40 miles without seeing your crew, or having a full checkpoint, as they called it. So the checkpoints in between only had snack food. So you're talking crisps and Oreos, some crackers and things, some sweets. So that's a long way to go when you're moving slowly, that you need some real food as well. So yeah, long distances in between. Even in Moab, there was a section, I think we did 24 miles between checkpoints. So yeah, you're having to carry a lot of water, a lot of gear as well. So your pack's quite heavy too. So, you probably got anywhere from 10 to 18 pounds on your back as well, which starts to really irritate you too. And yeah, it's just very tough. I think the weather came in, and I had a near-death experience along the way. My first time that I actually feared for my life.
Really?
Yeah, it was treacherous. It was in the middle of the night, and we had climbed up this mountain. I'd hooked up with another runner and her pacer, trying to keep up with them, because I'd seen a grizzly bear before this point, and all we were seeing was grizzly scat along the way. I know you and I spoke about that in Fairbanks, and I thought I was pretty comfortable with wildlife, but I was seeing scat like every sort of 2 minutes. So, and it was big, and it was like, what is the size of the animal this is coming out of, and how many of them are there? Because it was everywhere. So freaking out, thinking I need to stay with someone. And yeah, we're up the top of this ridge, which was super muddy. Rain was just hammering down. It was pitch dark. And yeah, those two got through this little corner, and I went through and slipped off the cliff and was literally hanging on to this grassy shrubs that were on the side, and my legs were dangling into the abyss below. And I was just screaming. Luckily, the pacer of the other girl came back and picked me up, but he had to like literally grab me from my elbows and drag me up the side of the mountain because I had my lucky poles attached as well. So I was
Oh,
like,
wow.
I can't grab your hand. It's like, don't let me go.
That's
That
terrifying.
it was terrifying. We still had like a good hour and a half before we got to the checkpoint as well. So I was like leaving that, trying to stay with them and thinking, gosh, I'm so cold and so wet. And it's like, don't think about what's just happened, because if you go into shock, like there is nothing, there's no shelter out here. You're done for. So it was just like almost like a battle of survival to get to that next checkpoint. And yeah, at that point, I really thought I might
Yeah. What mile was this at?
trying to think where that it was checkpoint 9. So I'm thinking it was probably 120, 130 miles in.
So you still had a long ways to go.
Still a long way to go. Everything was killing me. My feet had the worst blisters from the start of day one. Just never experienced
Well,
like that
you just had a
before.
character builder.
I, I did. I
It's
tell
one
you
of those
what,
like, if I
could
can
do
make it through
anything.
this, I can make it through anything.
Yeah. And my husband actually turned up at that checkpoint. So I think by having him and our dog there, Gobi, really gave me another boost as well. I think I really needed to see them at that point. But he'd come into that checkpoint with Leah, my crew person, and they were slipping and sliding through the mud. And Dion was just shaking his head. He's like, there is no way Lucia's going to continue. Like, this is the worst. This is so not Lucia's running terrain.
Yeah.
There is no way she's going to continue. And yeah, I left there with a smile on my face with all my wet weather gear on and back out in the rain. I see pictures of me smiling. I'm just like, where did that come from? I wasn't having fun.
That's awesome.
Yeah, that was epic.
At what point in that race did you know you were going to finish? I mean, I knew you said you were never going to quit, but you were always kind of up against the cutoffs, and, you know, with your near-death experience, you're seeing brown bears and grizzly bears. And
Yeah.
at what point, because there's always that point in a race where, you know, if you've run a 100-miler, 50-miler up, you know, you always know at that one, there's that point, like, I'm going to finish this thing. There's no doubt in your mind that, what was that point?
Yeah, I'm actually going to look up what mileage that was, because it was the following checkpoint, checkpoint 10, 146.99 miles in, technically.
It's never that. It's like 170 or something.
Yeah. So I'd left checkpoint 9 after near hypothermia, near death, just thinking, wow, this is just crazy. And I hooked up. I'd left with a bunch of, I think we had 3 girls and 1 pacer who was local. And I just thought, I'm sticking with them. And we literally death marched that during the night and the rain. And when I got back in then at checkpoint 10, that's when I thought, I'm doing this. Like, there is nothing stopping me now. You know, we've got 50 odd miles to go. And yeah, that's when I knew that I was going to finish. Yeah, it was going to be close to cutoffs, but I was going to finish. Yeah. So that was amazing feeling to have that.
Going back to when, you know, you said you stayed that 40 minutes in that checkpoint till the cutoff time. So now you're, you know, officially at cutoff. Then, you know, you got to keep on going. What was going through your head at that point? Because that's really hard when you're leaving the aid station at cutoff and knowing that you don't have any buffer time to do anything besides keep moving.
Yeah, and that was a worry in my head. Like, should I have moved quicker in the checkpoint, you know, taken 20 minutes and got out and got going? But I knew that I had to eat something proper, like a proper meal. I had to do my feet, the blisters, I had to deal with them. And yeah, leaving there, I just thought I've got to just get a wriggle on, like it is now or never. There was a bit of panic that had sat in. So I guess, yeah, it was a bit of racing against the clock and thinking. And normally in races, you know, the first couple of cutoffs are always the tightest. So I just thought if I can just keep moving and kind of try and make up a bit of time, maybe I can hook up with somebody and try and get, you know, another runner to kind of pace me, as you will, then things will start to come together. So, yeah. And essentially, you know, coming into that checkpoint, part of my brain was thinking, if I just slow down a little bit, I will miss the cutoff and then it's all over. I was also thinking Leah has taken the whole week off from her family, from her businesses. she's out here supporting me and she hasn't even done a checkpoint yet. Like I have to at least give her a couple of checkpoints. So that was kind of driving me forward as well. It's like, okay, well, she's out here. She's been out all night as well. I've got to get to the next checkpoint and see her again. And luckily from that checkpoint 3, I got to see her again at the next one. So it was just a smaller segment to say, okay, just got to get to Leah again. Just get to Leah. And then, yeah, I did actually start to make up a bit of time on the cutoffs. So it kind of relaxed a little bit in terms of it wasn't 40 minutes or I wasn't right on cutoff anymore. I was kind of more around that hour. And then that kind of stretched out a little bit towards the finish where I think I finished was just under 96 hours. So in the end, I was like 4 and a bit hours ahead of cutoff. So yeah, nothing too cushy, but yeah, enough.
That's still got to be really stressful. I mean, 4 hours is not a lot of time in a 200 miler, especially when you've been out there for 96 hours. 4 hours is not that much.
You're right.
No, exactly. It definitely weighed on me the whole race that it was a lot of pressure that I wasn't used to feeling. So
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, especially when you're used to being a day ahead of cutoff, 4 hours, that's
Yeah.
not a big buffer.
I know. And it kind of gave me a good kick up the bum as well to sort of say, you gotta work harder, girl. Like, you want to do more of these races, you're going to have to lift your game a little bit. I guess this race was a lot tougher than the other ones I'd done, but by the same token, it really humbles you as well to say, okay, you got to do more. You got to stop making excuses, work and life and everything getting in the way. You've just got to put more work in. So yeah, it was a very humbling experience from that as well.
Yeah. What have you over your previous 3 200s and going into this other one, what have you learned about your sleep and your food nutrition intake?
Well, let's start with food because that I did a lot better this time. And so much so I didn't have like the big hunger cravings afterwards. Like normally when you finish a day or two later, it's just like, all the food. Whereas I was just eating normally after the race. And I think I put that down to being really well planned. Like I had listened to the podcast and heard that the checkpoints in between just had snacks. So I made sure every time I left, like from the start, when I left Leah at checkpoint 4, I packed myself proper food. So I had things like chicken salad, croissant sandwiches. I'd have a chocolate milk with me or apple juice, or I'd have a big donut or a pastry. So I made sure that I had meals to have along the way and had them at the checkpoints as well to make sure I was fueling properly. And yeah, I found that doing the 2, you can't just, well, I can't anyway, and from most of the people I've spoken to, is you can't survive on gels and, that kind of stuff that you might get away with for 100 miles, because essentially for most of us, you're out there for 3 to 5 days. So it's like, well, why in a normal day you have breakfast, lunch and dinner? Why would you not do that when you're out pushing your body to the absolute limits and you're eating gels and, jelly snakes and marshmallows? It's like, come on, you got to be eating. And, it's hard because at times you do lose your appetite. But yeah, I've got to a point now where, I'm consciously thinking I have to take these calories in. And even if it's a point where you can't take any more in, you're leaving the checkpoint with something, and you're having to eat that on the first mile out of there. So just to get those calories in. And yeah, that's been a huge learning point. I mean, the destination trail races are like a buffet. You're coming into checkpoints, and I think each checkpoint's taking the opportunity to wow you as well. So you're getting a la carte burgers made. You're getting hash browns. It's quesadillas. It's at this race they had pierogies and like these mashed potato hash brown things. And yeah, it's just amazing the type of food that you can get at these races as well. So great opportunity to eat everything you can eat as well.
At 100, you get some M&Ms and maybe some day-old bacon.
Yeah, you might have some ramen going into the night. But yeah, these ones you definitely have to focus on eating well. A key thing for me has been chocolate milk. So even when I can't stomach like whole food anymore, I'll just have those Nesquik chocolate milks you buy at the service station. And, it's got 260, 270 calories that you're just knocking down. And it really lines your stomach and just gives you some energy. It tastes good. It's nice and sugary. And yeah, I just find that works a treat. So yeah, I'll kind of have 10 to 12 of those over a race as well.
Robbie actually used sweet tea like
Oh,
the
yeah.
the
Mm-hmm.
real the sugary sweet tea that you buy at the store, like Milo sweet tea. And
Yeah. Yeah.
that's it's interesting. Do you put it in your bottles, Robbie?
I do.
Yeah.
That's
That's a good
awesome.
idea.
That's a lot cheaper
Yeah.
than Tailwind.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Yeah. I've
Gallon
done that
last.
with coconut water as well.
Oh, have you? Yeah, I love
Yeah.
coconut water.
Yeah. And then the sleep
Yeah.
piece is, yeah, when I did my first one, I thought I would plan to sleep. So when I did Bigfoot, I kind of thought, okay, at the sleep stations, I'm going to have sleep. But I quickly found out that you can't force yourself to sleep. So nowadays, I have a very loose, like no plan. It's just when you get to a point where you need to sleep, that's when you normally just lay on the side of the trail and nap. Yeah, so I fell in love with trail napping during Bigfoot 200. I never thought I would do that because of all the creepy crawlies and wild animals, etc. But when you're that tired,
Don't
you can
care.
lay down on a cactus and it's comfortable. But at this race at Divide, I did not feel comfortable having trail naps for
With-
obvious reasons
with bears.
with bears, but also the weather. It was too cold.
Yeah.
Yeah, so that made that more difficult. So I literally had to plan. Every time I saw Leah, was thinking in my head, am I going to have a sleep? And I ended up having 3 sleeps in the back of the car. So the first 2 were an hour each. And then I had 40 minutes at the last one that I had as well. And yeah, I was just laying in the back of the car and Leah would sit in the front seat. And I'd just say to her, okay, give me an hour. But if you hear me like tossing and turning, then just wake me up because I'm obviously not sleeping. But she just laughed because afterwards she was like, as soon as you laid down, you were just snoring, you were out. So I was definitely ready to sleep. But
Yeah.
I did that like in Tahoe. I tried to have a sleep sort of 60 miles in, which was about 24 hours in on the new course where you're doing the first out and back. And I remember laying down there and I just couldn't sleep. And so, yeah, in my head, I'm just like, well, if you're not sleeping, you got to get up. So up you get. Try again at the next spot. And yeah, eventually you get to a point where you'll sleep. So yeah, but some people sleep loads. They'll have 3 or 4 hours at a sleep station. But yeah, for me, I kind of tend to work between 2 to 4 hours during a 200-mile race. So
It's
yeah.
crazy that the body can survive on 4 to 5 hours of you sleeping over a 200,
Yeah.
especially with the amount of like vert that you had. I mean, it seems like you were getting in quite a few calories. So, you weren't
Yeah.
low on that. Because I mean, I know that can have a huge effect as well. But
Yeah, and that's the thing. I think a lot of people think they need more sleep, and you actually need less sleep than you think. So yeah, I think you can push yourself a lot further.
yeah, our last guest told us 90 minutes. Just shoot for 90 minutes, hour and a half, and you're good. But
Yeah,
that's crazy to me.
yeah.
Because
And
I know how
sometimes,
the 3 a.m. hits in the 100, and I'm like, oh my gosh, this is gonna be awful.
yeah,
But
and sometimes like when it is those 3 a.m. sleepies, like we all get those,
yeah,
and it could be as little as just, in Moab, I remember leaning up against a rock. I had my pacer with me. I was like, just give me 3 minutes, and just like leant up against the rock in 3 minutes. I was like, okay, right, I'm back on it again.
yeah,
I'm no longer like all over the trail. It
yeah,
was just
zombie
enough
walking.
just enough to reset. So yeah, sometimes that's all you need.
All right, so I got to ask, any hallucinations?
I actually didn't on this one. I don't.
Come
I think
on, you're second person in a row.
I know. I think I was so scared for my life. I just couldn't. My mind just
Are you
didn't
sure you
relax.
saw a bear?
Yes, because other people saw it too, or maybe they were
Okay.
hallucinating. No.
Were you hallucinating the people that also saw it?
Yeah, but no hallucinations on this one. I have to say, I've hallucinated Bigfoot a lot. I remember seeing Michael Jackson along there. That was pretty wild.
Wow.
And yeah, Tahoe 200 was wild. I only had an hour and a half sleep over, what did it take me, 86, 87 hours. And by the end of the race, a friend caught up with me and she said I was so out of it. I didn't even know I was in a race anymore. I didn't know where we were. I thought there was trash all along the side of the trail. There was like little children in the forest that were smiling and waving at me.
No, I'm done at that point. That's a DNF right there for me. Little kids in the.
Oh, I know. I'd said that to one of my pacers earlier. She joined me for a night section and I was telling her and she's like, just shut up. She's like, it's 3 a.m. and you're telling me about little kids in the forest. I can't cope.
That's so funny.
Yeah. but
Yeah,
nothing on
I've
this
only
one.
I've only hallucinated twice. I'm so intrigued on these 200s to see what happens. But yeah, the hundreds,
Yeah.
yeah, out of five, I've only done it twice. So I think
Oh
my
well.
not this previous one, but the one before that, I think I wasn't scared, but I was kind of like I need to stay awake here because it was kind of dangerous. So, but yeah, I'm always
Yeah.
intrigued on hallucinations. The brain fascinates me, and the things that it can make you see are crazy. Little kids in the forest waving at you.
Yeah.
Nah, I'm
I
good.
know. It's a kind of a natural high, though, isn't it?
Yeah, it
So
is.
Yeah,
It's kind of
yeah.
weird. Out of your 4 200s and your 7 stage races, what do you think? There's a lot of similarities, it seems there. But what would you say some
yeah.
of the major differences are, other than maybe the obvious like sleeping at night with the stage races? But they do seem very similar to each other.
They do. And I guess the key difference with the single stage race, like a 100 or a 200-mile race, is you're just pushing through to the end. And so you're almost not giving your body a chance to throw up stuff that's going on. Whereas the stage race, you'll find a lot of the time people are strong for day 1, 2, maybe day 3, and then injuries start to come out because that rest period is actually detrimental. And even during stage races, like Dion and I would do a lot of them together, and we'd say to each other, I wish we could just keep running because this staying in the camp at night, your body stiffens up. So if you have got any underlying issues, that starts to flare up as well. Having to put your shoes on the next day over blisters is harder. Whereas if you just keep your shoes on and keep
Yeah.
moving, you're just avoiding what's going on. So I think for me, that's like the biggest difference in how you have to deal with yourself,
Yeah.
is having that downtime, which when you're doing a 200, you think, oh, I'd give anything to be able to have 8 hours sleep tonight. But yeah, essentially it can be detrimental to you as well.
Yeah.
So yeah,
Never thought of
and
it like that.
yeah,
Huh.
and having to eat dehydrated food.
Yeah. It's
Give me
awful.
cheeseburgers any day.
What? I guess I'm not gonna say what, but let's jump into the reason why you were up here in Alaska, and let's talk about you've mentioned Gobi a couple times. This is a story in itself, but we got time. Let's jump into that. Who is Gobi?
Okay. Who is Gobi? So Gobi is the cutest, patutest dog you'll ever meet. But yeah, she's a bit of a famous dog, bit of a legendary ultra runner herself. Back in 2016, my husband Dion was running an ultra marathon across the Gobi Desert, a multi-stage race. So it was 7 days, 6 stages, 55 miles, fully self-sufficient as well. And yeah, on day 1, this stray dog comes out of nowhere and starts following the runners in the race. And yeah, she runs nearly 20 miles day 1. Dion hadn't actually seen her until back at camp that afternoon, because she was sort of more back of the pack and he was there to win the race. But day 2, he starts the race and yeah, he looks down and this little dog is chewing on his gaiters, on his shoes. So pesky little dog with sharp teeth, and he sort of, scoots her off and she jumps back on, and yeah, they kind of have this backwards and forwards, and he calls out to say, whose damn dog is this? Someone get this dog away from me. But the race starts and yeah, he's left with this dog, hanging off his shoe, and yeah, they get off and they actually start running together, and yeah, she runs nearly 26 miles with him that day, across the over in the Tian Shan mountain range into the desert. And yeah, throughout the week they form a bond, and yeah, she runs nearly 80 miles with him across the desert. I don't know why she chose him, because he was there to win the race, so he's running fast. He could have stuck with someone further back having a bit more of a leisurely time. But yeah, she's a fast dog, and at the end of the race, of course, he wanted to adopt her, but you can't just take a dog from China back to your country. So he has to leave her with someone in China who says they'll look after her, but that doesn't go to plan. And yeah, she goes missing in a city of 3.5 million people. And he flies all the way back from Edinburgh, where we were living, back to China to search for this dog. And he sets up a search and volunteer team that starts with one person and grows into hundreds of people searching for this dog day and night. And yeah, miraculously, after a few weeks, they find her. And then he stays with her in China for 4 months to get her through the quarantine process. So I always say I got left for a 4-legged blonde. But yeah, there was a lot of blood work that had to be done. Got to get tested for rabies, and that takes 90 days. And yeah, she'd been hit by a car as well. So she needed an urgent operation on her right leg. And yeah, so that was a big old task. And then we finally got them both home to Edinburgh on January the 2nd, 2017. And the story had gone crazy over social media and on all the news channels around the world. And yeah, he got contacted to write a book about it and wrote the book Finding Gobi, which is New York Times bestseller and 24 languages now. And it's been adapted into a chapter book and a picture book. And yeah, we're just about to sign a new movie deal. So hopefully we'll have a movie in 18 months to 2 years as
Awesome.
well. And yeah, that's why we were kind of up in Alaska. We were making our way up there to do some speaking events. And yeah, we did a few libraries and a few schools and headed our way all around, Wasilla, Palmer, up to Fairbanks and back down to Anchorage, did a week of schools there. And yeah, so that was how we came to be in Alaska, of all places.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
I've read the book. The book is fantastic. I'm almost assuming you could find it literally anywhere you find a book. So
Oh, yeah.
yeah, go get
absolutely.
the book. I got the book. I read the audio. Somebody read the audio book to me. Yeah, fantastic book. It's great. The story is amazing. Lucia just hit the tip of it, but it was really cool to me. Like I'm a huge dog person, and it kind of seemed like in the book that Dion was not a dog person when him and Gobi kind of met. Is that true?
No.
He was more of a cat person. Is that what it was?
No, we'd become cat people due to circumstance because we'd been living in apartments. So we
Okay.
had a cat, but yeah, beforehand, he's always loved dogs. We
Okay.
actually had a Saint Bernard when we lived in Australia and New Zealand. So he was more a big dog person.
Oh, okay,
So
okay.
little pesky dog was
Yeah.
not what he was envisaging
Yeah,
to
but
have as a dog.
just through the story, like she says this bond, but I just feel like it was more than just a bond. It was just like they became partners and they were going to help each other finish it. So it was just really cool.
Yeah.
Go check it out. And I'm glad that this all happened. So we got to meet. It was cool.
Yeah. And now Dion's gone full circle and he's actually back in the Gobi Desert about to run the Gobi 400K. So it's about
Wow.
250 miles through the Gobi Desert, and they have no support. They have drop boxes out there. It's self-nav, so self-supported. And yeah, that's going to be pretty wild out there. So yeah.
And can you,
he's,
on stage races, can you follow people? Do they have little trackers and?
Yes, well, this isn't a stage race. This is a non-stop
Oh, okay.
race as well.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, but there is a tracker, and hopefully the organisers will be putting up some photos and things as well. So yeah, we can see how he's running along and make sure no dogs are following him along the desert.
You were like, dang it again.
Another dog?
I don't think Gobi would like that.
Well, hey, I got to ask, you mentioned a movie. Who's going to play you?
Well, I always joke and say it has to be Charlize Theron or Jennifer Lawrence, or there's no movie. I mean, the likeness is uncanny, right?
Yeah,
Yeah.
of course. It's there.
No, they haven't got that far down the track, but
No,
Colin Farrell's been linked to play Dion, so we'll see how that pans out.
Okay, awesome. So it's going to
Yeah.
be a big movie then.
Yeah.
I'm excited.
Yeah.
Well, yeah. Let's jump into your gear. Stage races, I can only imagine like gear requirements that you have to have. I know 200s have gear requirements that you have to have. So I'm assuming you have lots of gear. To walk us through like what's your pack look like? Do you have different styles of packs for like stage races? Day it's probably just a slight little pack, and then 200 milers, I'm assuming you're kind of in the fast pack type stuff. So walk us through like what kind of gear are you using?
Yeah. Well, for the stage races, you have to carry all your food and kit to survive. That,
Oh, do you? Okay.
As a minimum is a 20-litre to 30-litre pack. The
Oh,
first
I
race
wasn't
I
aware.
did, I used a 30-litre pack, but then realised if you have a 30-litre pack, you fill 30 litres. As I sharpened up my training and knowledge, I narrowed that down to 20 litres because you're carrying a sleeping bag, so you're investing in the lightest, warmest sleeping bag you can for weight-wise as well. And there was a couple of times I slept without even a sleeping mat underneath me because I was trying to cut back the weight so much. Whereas I probably should have just lost a couple of kilos and carried the sleeping mat, Yeah, you're carrying all your food as well, so dehydrated meals.
And that's for the whole week. You have to carry it all for the whole week.
breakfast, lunch, and
Wow.
dinner, 7 days.
Wow,
Yeah,
that's
so that's
that's
a
tough.
lot. Yeah, and they normally say you have to have 2,000 calories a day, and they will check that at the start of the race as well. So yeah, you're always. I love shopping for these races because it's the most calories for the least grams. Whereas
Yeah.
normally when you're trying to lose weight and stuff, you're like looking for the least calories. But this is great. It's like, oh, Pop Tarts and pork scratchings and, bits of Parmesan cheese and stuff like that. So yeah, high calorie food. Yeah, and having all of that in there. And stage races, for me, I'd always go minimal. So I'd wear the same clothes every day, same socks every day. I'd have a change of clothes for back at camp and yeah, a jacket to put on because it gets really cold at night. And yeah, I'd use my bag as a pillow and yeah, sleep in the sleeping bag and have a toothbrush that you'd cut it off, all trying to save weight, mini toothpaste, no deodorant, no hairbrush, just yeah, really basic. So yeah, that's a 20-liter pack for that one. And the organizers give you water kind of every 6 to 10 miles. So you'd normally have two 750 flasks at the
Oh, so you
front.
don't have to carry a lot of water then.
No. And at times, like through Marathon des Sables, because they'd give the water to you in 1.5-liter bottles, sometimes you knew you were going to run out of water, so you'd carry an extra one with you if you could, and literally just carry it in your hand because you didn't have anything else. Yeah, and in those races, I tended not to use poles, but you'd always have good quality trail shoes on and have gaiters to keep all the sand out as well. So particularly for Marathon des Sables in the Sahara Desert, you'd have gaiters. Some people had them right up to their knees. I was kind of mid-calf and have them secured on, like glued and Velcroed all around the edges of your shoes, not just clipped on like you might do for a 100-miler here. Proper full covering gaiters that are going from the edge to the back of the shoe. So no
Wow.
sand is getting in there
Yeah,
whatsoever.
that'd be a
Yeah.
nightmare.
Yeah. Yeah, and just getting your clothing right. You need clothing that's going to not chafe after 5-6 days out in the desert as well. So yeah, for me it was I used a lot of X-Bionic gear back in those days, which was kind of like tight sort of technical material. So yeah, there was no chafing bits and pieces.
That is a big
Yeah.
thing in Europe. A lot of pretty much everybody wears like the Lycra and that, I mean, it's starting to make its way over here into the US, but like, it's still not that big of a thing. Like if you're a male and you wear just tights, that's a weird thing still here. Like you go to the UK or Europe and it's just like, whatever, everybody, you watch UTMB live and it's like, everybody's wearing that. It's like, it's not weird
Yeah.
there.
And you feel like, I mean, it's not weird there, but I feel like a real tit in it because everything's so tight and you're just like, oh my God, all my little rolls are coming over the edge and I feel terrible. But by the end of the week, you've lost all that weight anyway. So then you look really sleek. Like
I
the
can
rest
only
of the
imagine
runners.
what you lose on a race like that or stage race like that. That's going to be insane.
Yeah. Oh, when you finish, you look like you've been at a concentration camp, just all the bones
Yeah.
are sticking out. You're muddy and yeah, that doesn't take long. You normally hit the bar afterwards and you're ordering double cheeseburgers and beers, and yeah, a couple of days later, you've put that weight back on.
That's crazy.
But yeah, and then for the 200s, there's quite a lot of stuff you have to put in your pack.
Yeah.
For the ones I did in the US, I used a 14-liter pack. I used Ultimate Direction at that point, and that was just enough. Like Moab, I actually had to switch out to my 20-liter pack at one point because the weather was coming in and I couldn't fit all my cold weather gear in the pack. So yeah, I swapped out to the 20-liter just to make sure I could fit more jackets and things in there. And yeah, I mean, now I'm using the Ultra Aspire Zygos, which I think must be about 16 liters. I think that's right. So yeah, I'm using that. And you just have to have so much stuff in there, mandatory kit. So normally you need to have a base layer, so a long sleeve base layer. You've got to have a head covering and a hat. So you have to have both things. You've got to have a head torch, spare batteries and a spare head torch. You've got to have leg coverings. You've got to have an emergency bivvy. You've got to have water. They normally specify that might be up to 3 liters or 4 liters, depending what the situation of the race is. You got to have your food in there. So that takes up a lot of room as well,
Yeah.
especially when you're carrying bottles of chocolate milk. Then, yeah, you need some stuff to look after your feet. So, little emergency kit of needles and stuff that you can,
Yeah.
and then bandages to wrap your feet as well. A rain jacket. So, yeah, it's just so much stuff. Trying to think, you get a tracker as well. Then you got your phone and, you got stuff like lube and salt tablets and, Tums and, I'll carry a bit of Tylenol with me as well. So special little packet for that. Yeah, got to have your phone to take photos. Yeah, I mean, what's a
You
race
can't miss
without
out
a
on
few
that, right?
selfies? And then you got your hiking poles, and yeah, you need gloves for when it gets cold. So there's just so much. That pack suddenly is really
Huge.
heavy.
Yep.
Yeah.
100%. I
Yeah.
get that. Well, all of your racing that you've done, I'm assuming that you've done 200s now, 100-milers now, because we didn't even touch on that. You're so awesome. You're way beyond the 100-mile talk. But what is something like super embarrassing that's happened to you while out on one of these races?
Well, pretty embarrassing was Moab 240. I had Rob Steger come and pace me. He used to run that Training for Ultra podcast. And yeah, he joined me, must have been about mile 80 or whenever you can have your first pacer. And he was joining me for a 50-mile section, which was huge. And as we started, I just suddenly got diarrhea, like really bad. And I had that for the next 70 miles. But I could sort of control myself for a little bit. But as we were kind of 30 miles in, like I just said to Rob, I've got to go right. And like my pants were coming down as I'm like telling him to like keep going.
Is he behind you or in front of you?
I told him to stay in front of me because I was literally having to just go, and it was noisy. And poor Rob, I was more embarrassed for him having to deal with it. And he's having to text my crew to say, we're going to need some Imodium and we're going to need a change of pants.
That's a good one. Right there on the trail. Can you imagine the people behind you are just like, oh, again, who is in front of me?
Yeah, I know. Deary me. And he's like texting my girlfriends who are because I was trying to tell Dion to go into my underwear drawer and get me, I call them granny pants, my full briefs, that I use for running. And his text back was, there's only strings and beads in here. That's not going to hold nothing back. Goodness, this is just getting worse.
Oh, my gosh.
So my poor girlfriends had to go into the Dollar General because there's no clothing stores in Moab. So they're in the dollar store buying literal granny pants that the only ones they had were big ass XL white granny pants. And that's what they delivered to me at the checkpoints to wear.
You're like, what is this?
Deary me. So yeah, that was pretty damn embarrassing.
That's pretty good. That's up there with, I would say that's top 3 of our embarrassing story. We've done 100+ podcasts and you're top 3. So
oh wow, that's good.
That's good. Yeah, that's a good one. Oh my gosh.
Shout out to Rob for putting up with me for 50 miles with that situation.
I could only imagine the people that were coming along after that. Like
that's what I'm saying. Like they're just coming behind and it's just right there on the trail. Like, man, who is this?
Yeah, I was trying to at least turn into the bushes, but
sprayed all over the bushes and the rocks.
Oh my gosh, that's so
not very
funny.
hygienic, I'm sure.
Yeah, but us ultra runners exactly know what was going on. So.
Yeah, everybody's running, be like, yeah, I get it.
Yeah.
Oh my
Someone's
gosh.
suffering up ahead.
We should try to catch him.
Yeah, let's get in front of her, please.
Yeah. Exactly.
Oh my gosh. Too funny. Well, the last question we always ask our guests is, who's somebody from your network that we could have on the podcast that has a good story? Maybe Rob? I don't.
Yeah, well, definitely Rob. Thinking who would be a good person. And I might want to say Leah, who crewed me at Divide. She is about to start Moab 240. So that starts on Friday next week. So yeah, maybe she would be a good one. She hasn't finished a 200 yet. So this is like her 3rd time lucky. She's been over to Scotland twice to attempt the Scotland 215 miles across Scotland. And yeah, she's had a DNF in both of those. So she's going hard for Moab. She's got a full crew and pacer kit. And yeah, she's just an absolute gem of a woman. She works ridiculous hours. Her training schedule is she just doesn't have time to train. So she just going out there and doing the best she can. So
Sounds like life. Everybody doesn't have
it'd be
time to
interesting
train
to hear
sometimes.
her journey after Moab for sure.
Yeah, no, that'd be cool. That'd be a good podcast. So.
And of course Dion,
Yeah,
after Ultra
yeah,
Gobi.
I don't know if we're big enough to have Dion on, so I'll write his name down, but I don't know. I mean, he's gonna have a movie about him, so
Yeah, but Gobi's the famous one, not
Gobi's
Dion.
the
That's what
famous
he always
one.
says.
Yep,
Yeah.
yep. Well, Lucia, we'll give you some time to shout out whoever you want to shout out. Where can people find you on social media? Where can they buy the book? Where can they anything? The time is yours. The floor is yours. Take it on.
Awesome. Well, you can find me on Instagram prolifically at Running Dutchie. So that tends to be where I do most of my posting, stories and stuff. I'm also on Facebook and TikTok. So follow me on there. I do coaching as well. If anyone wants any advice for 200s, even if you've got your own coach, I'm happy to share some advice as well. And books, you can find Finding Gobi on social media as Finding Gobi. Keep it simple. And we have a website, findinggobi.com, that has books that are autographed and pautographed. So Gobi signs them with her right paw.
That's
I
awesome.
had no idea what that was.
Yeah, and I guess shout out, to my husband Dion, who's starting the Ultra Gobi 400 today. Probably started right now, so wishing him all the best. And I'm going to be tracking him, so stay tuned on my social media as I'll be sharing posts about him as well. And that should be pretty exciting. But shout out to just absolutely everyone that I meet out at these ultras, like yourself, Justin. It's great to connect and love making all these new friends along the way. And I'm actually going to catch up with Amanda. I listened to your podcast with her the other day and realized she's in Tacoma and I'm in Seattle at the moment. So I'm like, hey, we should hook up. So there we
Super
go.
cool.
Another
Super cool.
hookup.
Yeah, and you met her through the podcast, or have you known her on social media?
Known her on social media, and just thought I'd listen to hers because she did Tahoe.
Yeah.
And so
Yeah, Amanda's super cool. We've run together before too. She's a incredible human being and an awesome story, which I'm sure you heard on the podcast. She's a great human being. So I'm glad you guys are connecting with that. That's really cool.
Yeah,
Cool.
absolutely.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much for coming on. I really appreciate it. It was a great story. Lots of laughs. That's what it's all about.
Yeah, absolutely. Now, do you want me to bring Gobi on to say hi?
We got to see Gobi. We got to end this with a Gobi.
Gobi?
We just got a bump in popularity just because Gobi's coming on.
Here she comes. She's very sleepy. We had a big walk this morning. There we go.
Wow.
Hey,
Gobi.
big walk. Hi. Oh, I think is her tongue hanging out? Yeah, her tongue's actually hanging out. Sorry, I just woke you up. Hey?
Have they said what kind of breed she is? Like maybe have they any guesses, or have y'all done like one of those genetic testings? Or
We didn't do any testing, but we think she's a Shih Tzu Chihuahua mix.
okay,
So but we've
So
never had her tested because we want to just promote adopt, don't shop, and all cute dogs are just the best. So
yeah, they're great.
but she is the cutest. She's
Awesome.
waking up now. She's like, oh yeah, hi everyone.
That's awesome. She's gonna be the highlight. Well, if you
Yep.
stuck around for an hour and 4 minutes, you get to see Gobi.
Yeah.
Awesome. Well, if you
All
like this
right.
podcast and you want to hear more, please leave us a review on any platform that you listen to it. It helps us get Lucia's podcast out. It helps us get all the other podcasts out to more people. It grows our audience. Leave us a comment on the Instagram post, and we'll see you on the trails.